7 o'clock, Your Worship.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'll bring this regular council meeting to order, Monday, May the 17th at 7 p.m. and to acknowledge that we are in the traditional territory of Stahelis. And the next order of business, please.
Yes, Your Worship. Do you have any late items?
I have no late items, no.
Thank you, Your Worship. Before we move forward, I'd like to advise council that we will be removing items 12A and B from the agenda this evening. We've been advised by the applicant that they wish to revise their applications.
Thank you.
Thank you. Could I have approval of the agenda then, please? Sorry, as amended.
As amended. And moved by Councillor Vidal, seconded by Councillor Palmer, was that? Oh, Councillor Hooper, sorry. Call the question. All in favour? Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Yes, we'll move on to number four, adoption of council minutes. We have the regular council meeting minutes of May 3rd, 2021 here for adoption.
Do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Piper, seconded by Councillor Palmer, yes? Palmer, no?
Sure.
Councillor Palmer, thank you. And any errors or omissions? Call the question. All in favour? Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Yes, Your Worship. We'll move on to number 5. Is there any business arising from the minutes?
Any business from councillors arising from the minutes? Being none, move on, please.
Thank you. We'll move on to number 6, consent agenda. We have 3 items of correspondence. One is a letter dated April 2nd, 2021 from the Government Finance Officers Association regarding the 2019 Annual Financial Report Award. We have a letter dated May 6, 2021 from the Fraser Valley Regional District regarding restructuring of the Fraser Valley Regional District Regional Indigenous Relations Committee. And we have a letter dated May 11, 2021 from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs regarding Climate Action Revenue Incentive Program. All here for receipt, Your Worship.
Mover for receipt, please, and seconder. Moved by Councillor Piper, seconded by Councillor Vidal. Call the question. All in favour? Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Yes, Your Worship. We have number 7, delegations and petitions. This evening we do not have any. We'll move on to number 8. There is no correspondence on the regular agenda. Therefore, there is no business arising from correspondence. We'll move on to number 10, reports of councillors, committees, committee of the whole, and commissions.
And we will start off with Councillor Hooper, please.
Yes, good evening. On May the 7th, 12th and 14th, I attended the annual Zoom meetings and training with the CNIB, held by their coordinator of technology. On May the 5th and 6th, I took part in the Terramac Institute's End of Poverty Conference and workshops. On May the 5th, I attended the Ending of Disability Poverty and the Human Rights Approach towards Ending Poverty. And on May the 6th, the workshop I attended was the Ending Youth Poverty and Building Youth Futures, Climate Change and Ending Poverty. And at the evening, I attended the Youth Influencing Policies and Systems. It was a great 2-day course, and I think everybody would have benefited from taking part in this one. On May the 10th, I attended the BCRN Zoom meeting with Devani Nadu regarding the up-and-coming World Elders Abuse Day. And on May the 14th, I attended a Zoom meeting with some members from the Foundry and YAKE, the Youth Addiction Knowledge Exchange, on the overdose deaths in British Columbia, and which is outnumbered the deaths in car crashes, homicide, suicide, and prescription-related drugs combined. And that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We have Councillor Palmer, please.
I didn't have any of my areas of responsibility come up in the last 2 weeks, although I have the library board meeting this week, so nothing to report.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Piper, please.
Thank you, Worship. On May 11th, I attended the Harrison-Eggesie Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors meeting online. A note from that meeting is the Community Futures North Fraser advised that they now have a staff person full-time on board, Mr. Derek Handsome, and his title is Recovery Advisor. Therefore, if any of our local businesses would like assistance or if they have any questions regarding grant applications or pivoting their business or marketing, for example, please feel welcome to get in touch with Community Futures directly, or you can get in touch with me and I'll be happy to connect you to them. On May 14th, I attended a session by the Whistler Institute, Tourism Building Back Better, a global conversation, and that was online. Thank you, Your Worship. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Councillor. Just one question, Councillor. With the Community Futures, they still have that grant program as well? They used to have for businesses?
I believe they do, but
Okay.
I couldn't speak on their behalf. I would definitely
No,
check in,
okay.
but I know they do so much support work for businesses. So
Thank
they're
you.
right up the road.
That's good. That's good to have that resource there for the businesses. Thank you. Now we have Councillor Vidal, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. On May 6th, I attended a virtual Lower Mainland Local Government Executive Board meeting. And on May 12th, 13th, and 14th, I attended the virtual Lower Mainland LGA virtual conference. The Wednesday morning session of the conference was entitled What UNDRIP Means to Local Governments. This session focused on the legal principles and what local government can do to further the principles of the Declaration. And I just want to say that following that session, that we indeed are fortunate to have an established committee-to-committee forum with our Stahelis partners, which has resulted in numerous projects and cooperation. A draft memorandum of understanding has been developed, and we do look forward to finalizing and further discussions with it once COVID restrictions are eased and we can meet in person once again. May 13th highlighted an address by Minister Josie Osborne, our Minister of Municipal Affairs, and our AGM and resolution sessions. I'm pleased to report that a resolution to request elimination of the 7% provincial sales tax on non-medical face masks and shields was endorsed. The resolution will now be forwarded to UBCM for consideration. May 14th sessions focused on climate change and what our local governments can do in preparation. The discussion, and I also attended the discussion by the Whistler Institute. There was also a session on the legal issues that are available and tools that are available to local governments in combating the climate change. And these include things such as bylaws, our OCP, and land use issues. The AGM announced, at the AGM, the new executive was announced for Lower Mainland LGA. And I do indeed look forward to serving another one-year term with the new board. And that's the end of my report, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The next order of business, please.
Yes, Your Worship. We'll move on to number 11, and that's reports from the mayor.
Thank you. Just a question to ask the staff. Now back, was it earlier this year where our financial officer received the award for the financial international statements? And the one that we have on the consent agenda, is that over and above that for the village?
The correspondence on the consent agenda refers to the announcement that the financial officer and the village will be receiving this award in the near future. It just hasn't arrived yet.
Okay, okay. For those residents who may have missed this at a previous meeting, that I'll read this out to you. I think it's very important that that the annual statements they're carried out by our village staff are done at a high level, and that this is a recognition for that. We are pleased to notify you that your annual financial report for fiscal year ended December 31st, 2019 qualifies for a Canadian Award for financial reporting. The Canadian financial reporting recognizes excellence in governmental accounting and financial reporting and represents a significant accomplishment by a local government and its management. We hope that you will arrange for a formal presentation of the Canadian Award, and that the appropriate publicity will be given to this notable achievement. To assist you in this, they put in a sample release if we wish to use it. We hope that your example will encourage other government officials in their efforts to achieve and maintain excellence in their own financial reporting. I think it's a great achievement, and I applaud our financial officer, Ms. Jones, and the staff for a job well done. Thank you very much. And as a couple of the other councillors mentioned, that the Whistler put on this tourism building back session for 2 hours on Friday, chaired by Jack Crompton, and it was introduced by LMLJ President Laura DuPont. We have a 33-member municipalities in the Lower Mainland local government. There were 3 panelists. I believe it was Blair Fisher, Tourism Whistler, Rodney Payne, Pemberton. He's a think tank sort of company that he leads, and Megan Wood from Burlington in the United States. And also the few things they came out with from this was 219 to 221, there was a 62% decrease in BC recorded tourism. Travel by air and cruise ships is a concern when it comes to climate change. This was a big point of discussion, was a lot to do with climate change and how they can address this. And of course, it's not an easy problem. Everybody obviously said to try and deal with these things. They believe by 2030 there'll be an increase of about 18% in tourism, and in places like New Zealand, they're looking at different ways of dealing with tourism and travelers. Sustainable infrastructure was another one that was of great importance in certain municipalities. Of course, we're very fortunate in Harrison to have good infrastructure in place in that regards. And another point that came in was the in resort municipalities was the buy-in by residents to buy in that we are resort municipalities, and it is the visitors that that we have to welcome, and they also pay towards the costs of the upkeep of our communities and taxes. Of course, the importance to our business, very important part to our business community. So that was a good session on that. The other one that we had on the was earlier on last week was with our Minister Josie Osborne, and Minister Baer was that. It was introduced. She is now the Minister for Connectivity Issues for Municipalities in regards to the internet sites and all that sort of stuff that's certain municipalities are lacking on. We're not really have any real problems from that perspective. Not major ones like other municipalities, especially in the far rural ones. So that was a good session there. It was extended to 80 minutes this time to allow for the municipalities to have their say on that. It was nice to briefly speak to Minister Bear, used to be our Minister for Tourism. In the regional district session, the Parks and Trails are bringing in a policy that we've had for a number of years here in regards to a memorial program in their regional parks and trails. So they're looking at putting a policy together to bring that on because they've had a lot of inquiries regarding memorial benches from residents in the large electoral areas. BC Transit update, provincial budget. They still continue to support the 21-22 expansion initiative to extend the Fraser Valley Express service to TransLink's Lougheed Town Centre SkyTrain station. This is the FVX expansion is also identified as a transportation priority in the board's recently adopted 2021-22 strategic plan. So they're looking at that. In the provincial budget also included an initiative to provide free transit for youth 12 and under across the province. This initiative was included in the Ministry of Transportation Infrastructure mandate letter. Costs related to providing free transit for youth and under are unknown at this time. The board will be advised as more information on this initiative is available. And that is, I think, we had one at the Regional and Corporate Services Committee, we had one delegation from Marilyn Bergstra, BC Policy Specialist, Action on Smoking and Health, in regards to the smoking deaths and situations in the country and in the province, and of course the vapor smoking of so many youth that we have as well, which is a real consideration in regards to the health. And of course, secondhand smoke is a major thing against the disease from smoking. So that was that, and that is my end of my report. Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We'll move on to number 12, reports from staff. The first report we have from the financial officer regarding the 2020 Statement of Financial Information.
Jones.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to the rest of council. The Statement of Financial Information is a statutory requirement under the Financial Information Act that must be filed annually by June 30th. The Statement of Financial Information and accompanying schedules must be approved in writing by the Council and Chief Financial Officer. Tonight, I have presented this report here for you, and the recommendation is that the 2020 Statement of Financial Information be approved. Thank you.
So we have a motion moved by Councillor Piper, seconded by Councillor Bylaw. Call the sorry, are there any questions for the financial officer? None being, Councillor Hooper.
Yeah, just a couple on there on page 64. It's just some of the figures are a bit confusing to me. I take it that the Pond Pro Canada was to do with the fountain, the 100,000 and that. But what I can't see is that when they installed the fountain, did they pay all the subcontractors or did we pay any of the subcontractors?
Ms. Jones?
I'll turn that over to the operations manager who handled that project.
Operations manager may have comments on this.
Yes, through you to Councillor Hooper. The Pond Pro did pay subcontractors for the work they did. I believe there was an excavating contractor they paid. and there was some small electrical work that they had included in their proposal. The village did pay an electrical contractor to extend hydro from the terminus to where it is today in order to be able to serve the fountain where it sits today.
And that would be, the electrical contract would be Moonlight Electric, I'll take it.
That is correct, sir.
Is that correct? Moonlight, yes?
Yeah. Also on items here that I think are associated with the ranger station. Is it the two items, Sanderson Concrete and Skulls Placing and Finishing?
Ms. Jones?
Yes, Your Worship, through you to the Councillor Hooper. The Sanderson Concrete was the picnic table purchases,
Right, thank you.
and the Skulls Placing and Finishing was with regards to the Arts Centre.
Right, thank you. And the last one I've got is Timbro Contracting. I'll take it that was the McPherson project.
Jones?
Yes, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Hooper and the rest of council. The Timbro Contracting, there was the McPherson culvert was in there. And in addition, there was the release of a holdback in relation to Lift Station 3 project. That's what generally combined were most of the funds there.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from councillors? None being, I'll call the question. All in favour? Everybody in favour? Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Yes, we'll move on to the next report. That's from the operations manager regarding the Miami River Greenway and McCombs Drive Trail projects.
Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to council. I'm here this evening to seek council's approval to award the contract for the design and construction of the Miami River Greenway and McCombs Drive trails. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Harrison Hot Springs saw an unprecedented number of day use visitors in 2020. At times, local residents found it challenging to exercise on our built trails due to crowding as the large number of visitors put pressure on the capacity of the Lagoon Trail and the promenade areas. The project, as proposed, will complete the Miami River Greenway Trail and construct a walking trail on McCombs Drive that will benefit both residents and visitors and support the village's active transportation plan. The McCombs Drive Trail will be approximately 3 meters wide and connect the East Sector Park trails and the Miami River Greenway. On October 19th, 2020, Council authorized staff to apply for $350,000 in grant funding through the Community Economic Recovery Infrastructure Program in support of this project. The application was successful and staff issued a request for proposals in March for the engineering and design, where proponents were asked to provide a fixed cost proposal that independently outlined the cost of each portion of the project, including an option for asphalt surfacing of the McCombs Drive Trail. On page 2 of my report, you'll see that there were 2 compliant proposals received, one from Timbro Construction. The total project cost with gravel surface is $413,075. The cost to include asphalt pavement is $223,440, bringing a total project with a paved surface to $636,515. Both options are over budget. Transformations Landscaping, total project cost with gravel surface is $308,750. Cost to include asphalt pavement is $152,994. Total project cost with paved surface is $461,244. The paved option puts this project over budget, so staff is recommending that the Miami River Greenway and McCombs Drive Trail project be awarded to Transformations Landscaping and improved at a cost not to exceed $308,750 to be funded by the Community Economic Recovery Infrastructure Program funds, and that staff be authorized to use the balance of funds for project upgrades and enhancements.
So we have a recommendation here. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Palmer, seconded by Councillor Vidal. And for discussion, we'll start off with Councillor Piper.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to staff. I'm a little bit sad that there's not going to be, I anticipate not going to be any asphalt. I was excited about that because the potential for snow and ice control and getting pedestrians off of McCombs and onto the trail essentially. But my question is, with the gravel surface that will go down, is it going to be more of a meandering type of trail, or is it going to be just a straight shoot sort of a design?
Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Piper. The majority of the path on McCombs will be a straight line paralleling the asphalt. There will be some features that it'll need to meander around, but that's all. It's not going to be have that type of feature generally.
And if I may, I just have one last question. I'm wondering about, does the price also include signage so we can indicate that it's a no parking zone or no stopping zone? Or is that what we would use the balance of funds from, or would that be a total separate cost?
Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Piper. The cost does include way sign or signage to point the way or identify what the name of the name of the trail is, but it does not include no parking. That area is not actually a no parking area.
Are we not concerned about vehicles parking on the pathway?
There will actually be a separation between the path and the roadway.
Okay. I'd like to stress that we need some signage there because drivers will take advantage of that. We're seeing that on Pine with even our center line down. And I know Bylaw is addressing that, but I would like staff to consider signage, please. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Palmer?
I'm happy with the proposal. I like the trail. I think it'll get people off, move people off McCombs when they're walking. I think it's great, got additional recreational prospects, but even I think it's good from a safety point of view. I really didn't want it. I mean, I know we all have different views. I didn't want it to be asphalt. I didn't want to be paving the grass strip. So I'm happy with gravel. So the end result is actually one that I'm content with. And I think it's going to really improve our trail, Joe, in the village in terms of residents being able to walk and not being on the road. I mean, there's still a few places where people have to walk on the pavement on the road on McCombs and Eagle, and those are things to be worked out in the future. But I see this as taking people off a good chunk of McCombs and children off a good chunk of McCombs. So to me, it's a good solution. So I'm supportive of this particular awarding of the contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Vidal?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Cook. A couple of questions. I just need to be assured that if we're using gravel, that it's going to be fully accessible and ease of use for mobility challenged individuals who use wheelchairs or mobility scooters, or even for young families who use strollers. Can you comment on that?
Mr. Cook?
Yes, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Vidal. That is going to make part of, or that'll be part of the design review process, is to make sure that it is accessible for wheelchairs and baby carriages.
Thank you. And another question, Mr. Cook, is I know in the original design that it included sort of access points into the East Sector lands. Is that still in the design plans?
Cook?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Vital. Yes, that is, it will provide a connection point. I'm not sure if there's one or two locations where it'll connect.
All right, thank you. And I also wanted to say too that I also share Councillor Piper's concern with signage. I do agree that if signage isn't included and erected that indicate no parking, then I think we will run into people thinking that it is available for parking. I've noticed along McCombs, especially in the new developments down there, because the roads are quite tight, that often visitors to that subdivision or residence will use the grass area on McCombs for additional parking. So I would encourage staff to look at some signage indicating no parking. Thank you, Your Worship. No further questions.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll just make one comment on your question regarding the strollers and the disability. Prior, maybe a month or so ago, even before that, I did take the opportunity to speak to some parents who were taking their strollers around the lagoon area, which is gravelled, of course, and also I spoke to the gentleman with the little dog who's in the disability scooter, who's always around every day around the village. And the parents say, no, actually we like it. It seems we like the gravel paths here because it seems to put the baby to sleep. Well, that was one parent, but they said of course, they have big wheels on these strollers now. So she said, no, we have no problems at all with that. And I did mention about this pathway on McCombs where to the residents who live there, so no, we have no problems with that. And the gentleman with the mobility, he said, no, I go around the lagoon and that is, I have no problems. So it's, if that helps to answer your question in some way, Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper.
Yes, thank you. Back in October, I voted against this project because I said it was we wasn't asking for enough funding. Well, obviously that's been proven by the two estimates we've got in at the moment. The other thing is it's not exactly what the council voted for last October. The Miami Greenway pathway has now gone down by 25% in the width. We're getting no control signal crossing at the junction of McCombs and Eagle. And I'm desperately against the gravel or the asphalt. But the other thing is, when we put in the asphalt down, the gravel down, are we leveling the pathway off? Or is it going to be follow the contours of the grass as it is at the moment? Because that's going to mean installing quite a bit of edge restraint on some areas. I just want to make sure that's been taken into consideration.
Mr. Cook, do you have any comments on that? Excuse me, buddy, and this is a design build, am I correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, thank you.
It's the designers and build, so they're
Who's an answer? Hang on, Councillor. Excuse me, Mr. Cook's going to give you an answer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Hooper. That is going to make I will take that into consideration, and that will make part of the design.
Right. The other thing to take into consideration is that when we see the drawings of of back in October, it showed the pedestrians walking, pushchair, and two vehicles. Now, part of that carriageway down there is less than 23 feet in width. So unless we stop parking on both sides of the road, you won't, if a vehicle was to park on the east side, you would not get two vehicles passing each other safely without entering onto the new footpath. So are we going to stop all parking on the east side, especially between Pine and Alder, for pedestrian safety?
Mr. Cook, does this come under the design build
That is correct.
question?
That is correct, Your Worship.
So we're dealing with these problems as they come up. But the other question is, there's a considerable cost difference in cost between Timbrose gravel surface and transformation, and for what I estimated it at. Has the Greenway footpath been reduced by 25% to save on costs?
Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Hooper. That was actually came at the recommendation of our environmental consultant to reduce it from 2 meters to 1.5 meters.
Right. Now, even with 1.5 meters, are we going to do any riverbank shoring up along the 300 block area? Because the footpath along that, the gravel path along there in places is less than 1 meter in width. Now, I know that we've done some extensive gravel laying down there earlier on this year. Are we going to be overlaying that gravel we've already done, or is that work going to take place afterwards?
I believe part of this, excuse me, part of this contract, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Cook, is only to deal with the 200 block. Is that correct? Thank you. Not the 3. Now, we've already completed the other blocks. Is that right?
That is correct, Your Worship.
Yeah, and this is my other point. We completed the other block, yet it was shown on the original drawings back in October that we was to do the whole of the Miami Greenway. So obviously, if we've already completed part of this, what budget has it come out of?
Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Hooper. Are you talking about resurfacing the 300 block?
Yes.
That would come out of our operating budget.
So the residents have paid for that, because originally that was part of the recovery infrastructure grant that we applied for.
Excuse me, just can I intervene here for a minute? I do have the report of October the 11th, 2020, Councillor. Is that what you have in front of you?
That's what I've got in front of me.
Yeah, well, it states that there that the proposed location of new walking trails is along the east side of McCombs Drive, starting at Miami River Bridge across from the Miami River Greenway entry point, ending McPherson Road. The trail will be accessible. Oh, sorry, the previous paragraph. Sorry. Staff is proposing the completion of Miami River Greenway Trail and construction of a new wide width walking trail that will benefit both residents and visitors in the 200 block. So we just mentioned the 200 block, not 300 or 400 block.
But back in October, when I said that it was the whole of the Greenway, I was told yes, because the embankment there near by the river is in desperate need of some work to it. Now, it's not what it was not as it was put to us back in October, but also what is happening now with that controlled crossing point, because that is on a blind corner as you come round from McCombs. So we're not getting that neither.
Well, I give it the minutes of what you're making reference to in regards, you thought it was the whole trail. We don't have those minutes in front of us, so I wouldn't like, I would like that to to be looked at because that part, I don't recall that. I can only recall the Greenway Trail on McCombs and the 200 block to surface. And then the other question is about the crossing, Mr. Cook?
Yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Hooper, there is a proposal. The proposal does provide two options for a pedestrian crossing. It's a light system that would be mounted to the south side of the fencing on at lift station 3 that would alert drivers when a pedestrian is going to be crossing in the blind location.
Is that going ahead?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay, just got a couple of points to make. Well, I've already filled you in about my interaction with the residents and the mobility and the strollers, so that seems to be no problem. With the design build, Mr. Cook, I assume that will it'll be designed in such a way that the gravel will sort of, I don't say will stop but it will more or less stop any growth from coming through, like weeds and that sort of stuff.
Yes, Your Worship, that will make we'll make sure that is part of the design process. That'll show or provide a subsurface that ensure that there's no weeds that'll grow through.
And in regards to the parking situation, I must agree with Councillors Piper and Vidal on this one, that if there is going to be parking on McCombs there, it should be on the west side where some of it has sidewalk. A lot of it doesn't. But I think if we don't do something on this new trail when it's completed, it'll happen what's happening now, that any overflow, which is not our responsibility, from new properties and even the older properties closer to our lift station are now using the boulevards for parking. So I think that's something that should be looked at in regards to signage, for definitely no parking there, because that's going to be a hindrance to the walkers who are walking along there. People getting in their cars, starting them up and pulling away and everything and all that. Yeah, if we have to have parking, it would have to be I believe, on the west side. That would help to such time that we design whatever we're going to design with that street. And at some point, again, not to do with this project here, I think when it comes to the consultant we have at the moment, I did mention at the committee whole that we have to do something from Eagle to McPherson to reduce the speed limit as well on that road. That's going to be a very important issue as well, reducing the speed limit, because that, I guarantee you, that pathway is going to be well used by for walking, and it's I think it's consideration should be looked at for the west side for parking at the moment anyway, and definitely not on the east side. I think that's going to be a real major problem, especially at night when there's nobody walking. They'll park there with their vehicles when there's, especially in the winter months when things go dark quite quickly. It's more, I mean, from the second bridge to McPherson, there's no problem. There's no homes down there on that side for parking as such. But it's just from Emerald to Miami River Drive. That's all residential. So that would be a problem. And yes, according to the original plan that we had, it is a runway, correct? The trail.
That is correct, sir.
Other questions from council? Councillor Hooper.
Yes, you said about parking on the west side. You really got to look at the width of the carriageway there. because I say in some areas down there, it is down to 23 feet. You will not get a vehicle parked there and two cars passing at the same time safely. Now, these are based on normal vehicles. When you've got concrete lorries and deliveries and muckaway trucks and the rest of it, you have not got the width to allow parking on that road. And if for safety's sake, if any vehicle comes down there at speeds and they find they can't make it past a parked vehicle because of an oncoming vehicle, they will go straight onto that sidewalk, the new one. So please look at that again. Take the width measurements and talk to ICBC, because you will have a major incident there. We've already had a young kid on the news today killed in his own driveway because of a speeding vehicle. So please look at that again. You might have to just do away with parking all the way up McCombs. Thank you.
Excuse me, councillor, your reference to a young person being killed, was this recently?
Yes, it's on the news today. A speeding
on
vehicle crossed.
McCombs?
Not on McCombs. This is from a speeding vehicle that's crossed two driveways and hit a kid on his bike on his own driveway. This is what you're liable to get down McCombs.
Well, I think without getting into a deep discussion, we have several streets in our community that when cars are parked on both sides, take Eagle, which has been there long before you and I came here, that cars get through, and they're boat trailers, everything. But one of the staff have a comment?
Yes, Your Worship. I just wanted to assure Councillor Hooper and the rest of council that we flagged this issue for special consideration in the upcoming parking master plan.
There you go.
This has been a really helpful discussion, and we'll
Right.
make sure that a qualified professional looks exactly at those safety issues, the width issues, and those sorts of things. We appreciate it.
So does that help with your answer, councillor? We're going through the safety plan at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you. The questions from council on this? Okay, I'll call the question now on the project. Excuse me. Oh dear. Just call the question. All in favour? Opposed? Opposed, Councillor Hooper. Motion passes. The next order of business, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We'll move on to number 13, bylaws. And the first report is regarding the council procedure bylaw. This introduction of a new bylaw. This matter was before council at a committee of the whole on April 9, 2021. And at that meeting, council considered various recommended amendments and changes to the bylaw, one of which was to include new business in the order of business. So there's some other substantive changes and revisions in the bylaw that include modern best practice, updates to technology, online meetings, and virtual participation, and quite a number of necessary housekeeping matters that were reflected in several of the headings. Pursuant to section 124.3 of the charter, public notice was provided for the proposed bylaw on May 7th and May 14th, as per section 94 of the community charter, and that was in the newspaper. The recommendation this evening is that council procedure bylaw number 1164/2021 be given first, second, and third readings.
So we have a recommendation for first, second, and third reading, moved by Councillor Piper, seconded by Councillor Vidal. And now we'll have a discussion, starting with Councillor Palmer. If you have any discussion.
Well, first off, I've gone through it, and I wanted to say we've discussed this a few times, and I had some concerns about the old one, and I feel that this has dealt with some. One of the concerns I always had was the ability of councillors to be able to add items to the agenda, and that's been dealt with very fairly by this amendment. So I'm I'm happy with that. So a counselor can introduce a new business item and have it discussed even at that meeting, which is very good. I also note many of the changes make sense. I know there are issuing petitions now. If you collect a petition, you can simply put the person's physical address rather than trying to figure out what box number they are. So I can see that that will facilitate petition taking a little easier. And I suppose we had discussed before about the issue of council reports and how to deal with that. And I know we haven't dealt with that. And I guess when I reflect on that, I think that probably is the best solution. I don't know what we can do actually to solve the problem. I guess that if we actually kind of keep our reports brief, then it isn't an issue. We have the option of handing paper in as well. So at one point I thought that needed to be dealt with, and I think I've slowly worked my way to thinking there's no easy solution to that question. So it's not perfect, but it's better. And that's, and I'm sure subsequent adjustments to it over the next decade or two will make it better and better. But I think it's important that it enfranchises council members to be able to bring matters forward and have impact on the meeting agenda. I think that's very important, and it satisfies that. So I look forward as look at it as a good step forward. So I'm supportive of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Your Worship, and certainly I thank you for staff for incorporating quite a lengthy discussion that we did have at the Committee of the Whole. I'm satisfied with the additions and amendments that have been put forward in the draft bylaw, and no further comments at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hooper.
Yes, thank you. A couple of bits. On page 103, the rules of conduct and debate. No member may speak for more than once on the same question without leave of the council. We've all got more than multiple questions. We've all come back. So I think that one should be taken out completely. Unless we're going to just have to say what we can say and then not add to any other councillors' comments or concerns. At least 24 hours on the committees of the whole, at least 24 hours before a committee of the whole, the corporate officer must designate the corporate or designated must give the public notice of the time and place. 24 hours. I mean, that should be more like at least the minimum 48. 24 hours, you don't even go to the post office that many times, you know. So I think that one needs to be changed. Also, a council member may request that the whole or any part of a bylaw shall be read before the motion for reconsideration and adoption is put in. Do you realise how much time that could take on some of our motions? We could ask, well, we could just tie up the council and staff endlessly if we wanted to on that one. I think that most of the points here are good, but no, them ones I've got some serious concerns with. That one, that we're not being able to ask more than one question, and two, that the residents aren't being given enough notice of the committee of the wholes. Thank you.
I think in regards to the time element, I think that's that if we had to call an emergency meeting, like we've had to on the odd occasion, that you have to give at least, this is legislation, right? You have to give 24 hours notice. Other than that, as you very well know, lots of notice is given before we do have a meeting of any kind, but sometimes there are emergencies that have to be called, or they be closed or open, but we still have to give notice if it's open go to the public within 24 hours. Councillor Piper.
Thank you, Worship. I really have no comments. I think staff did a great job of the updates and it's within legislation. So I'm satisfied that we have a solid procedure bylaw moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I'd like to thank the staff for putting all this together. Obviously, there was quite a bit of discussion previously to this to bring up any points of concerns that you may have had. The only question I just want to clarify with the corporate officer, just correct me if I'm right or wrong, that the public, when we're doing these procedure bylaws, are not required to make comments on this?
That is correct, Your Worship. The legislation requires that council provide notice of their intent, but there is no requirement to provide for public input or comments.
That's under legislations. In case any of you have any questions in your mind, we follow the legislation when we're carrying out procedures. So that's any other questions from the council on this? Okay, for first, second, and third reading, I will now call the question. All in favour? Everybody in favour? Yes. Motion passes. Thank you very much. And the next order of business, please.
Yes, Your Worship, we'll move on to number 14. That's questions from the public pertaining to agenda items only.
Are there any questions from the public pertaining to the agenda items? Thank you.
Any member of the public who wishes to ask a question should now use the raise hand feature. We have a question from Mr. John Allen.
Good evening, Mr. Allen. You have a question? Good evening, Mr. Allen. You have a question? Have you unmuted yourself?
We have, looks like Mr. Allen entering the room by telephone, just connecting.
You still there, Mr. Allen?
Hello, hello.
Yeah, right, we can hear you now.
Oh, God. Thank you very much for waiting. The way this works, I have to phone in because I don't have those cameras and microphones in my computer. So thank you for your patience. A couple of questions. When it comes to the items 12A and B, I realize they have been withdrawn from the agenda, but I would like to ask Council why this proposed development was not referred to our Advisory Planning Commission, which was brought into being and according to the bylaw is supposed to be used for the purpose of gathering a wider opinion from the residents of the village on developments. And yet this very large development has come quickly before Council with a recommendation to proceed, no referral to the APC, and raises the question as to why there's any point in even having a zoning bylaw when apparently it doesn't mean a darn thing. There aren't any limits. So my question is why was the APC step skipped on this and other developments, and why is Council not using the Advisory Planning Commission?
I think in this particular instance, if this had gone through this evening due to some reason why it didn't go through. I think council would have had the opportunity, if they wished to, have asked the planner to move to ask the APC to review this before it came back against the council. That's what probably would have happened this evening, Mr. Allen. If
But-
that
but
helps
Mr.
to answer
Mayor-
if that helps to answer your question.
Well, it doesn't really, because the practice for many years in Harris and other municipalities is that at the early stage of such a proposal, it would go to the APC. And our APC has been routinely ignored.
When this
And-
came
and-
before council as the planning consultant begins the process on these developments, it's just the beginning and the start of the process. When it comes back to council, like it would have done this evening, but for some reason it couldn't, the opportunity would have been given from council to ask that it be forwarded to the APC for their review before it came back again to council with the with areas of that the proponent had asked for. So that's the process that would have followed if it had gone through this evening.
Well, it wasn't one of the suggestions or recommendations from the planner. And
It is
normally
it-
that referral would be at the start, which would have been over a month ago. And the referral to APC was not made.
Council also has the authority to ask the planner to have this sent to the APC for their deliberations as well. So that's entirely up to council from that point of view. And your next question, sir?
Well, my next question was about the public, the procedural bylaw, the requirement of the legislation to advertise a procedural bylaw change to the general public. That requirement is supposed to be there to invite the public to comment on the procedural bylaw, which dramatically affects their civic rights and their role in the council deliberations. Yet the process that you are following has no opportunity or invitation for any member of the public to comment on the procedural bylaw. So it makes a nonsense of even advertising that you're doing it if you're not open to public comment on what you're doing.
Corporate officer, when I asked a question earlier on, mentioned this is under legislation that you don't need comments from the public, and also the procedure bylaw is the bylaw by which council governs themselves, and it's council that dictates how they would like to see their procedures carried out. And since 2012, amendments have been made to this 6 times now in regards to this. So it has been amended on several occasions. But I just asked the corporate officer to repeat what she repeated earlier on. Thank you, Ms. Key.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, as I stated earlier, there is no requirement under section 124.3 of the community charter for councils to receive comments or public feedback.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Allen.
So
Any
the
other
point
questions?
of the advertising then is to tell us what you're doing without asking our opinion about what you're doing. Is that correct?
That's correct. I'll explain why we have to put a notice out.
Well, you have to do it because the intent of Victoria was.
Would you allow the corporate officer to speak, please? Thank you.
No. Okay.
Yes, Your Worship. Again, under section 124, it gives reasons as to how and when the councils can introduce a bylaw or make amendments or changes to the council procedure bylaw, all stated in section 124. They have to provide notice under section 94, and under that notice, it must give the reasons and the intent to which that bylaw is going to be introduced or amended. So that's provided in the notice, Your Worship.
Thank you, Ms. Key.
Yes,
Any other?
Mr. Mayor, I do know what a notice is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from the public this evening?
We have a question from Ms. Christy Sanford.
Yes, thank you for hearing me.
Good evening.
Good evening, Your Worship, and thank you, councillors, for hearing my objections. I'd like to object to the notice of variance that is being proposed. I am the daughter.
Excuse me, madam, 1 second. The corporate officer has her hand up. There must be something she has to point out to you.
Yes, thank you. For the member of the public, just wish to advise that those two items were removed from the agenda earlier on when the meeting first convened. There is no opportunity to speak on those matters. They've been removed from the agenda.
So there will never be an opportunity for the residents of Harrison to speak to this? Is that correct?
Your Worship, as I may, there will be opportunity at another time. The applicant has advised us that they wish to revise their applications. In doing so, those will come before council again, and the required legislative notice will go out again as it did previously.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Does that help you?
Yes, it does. Thank you. I'll wait and I'll speak to it then.
Yes, you'll have another opportunity, and we have to serve notice again as well.
Of course.
Thank you very much for your question.
you.
Any other questions from the public this evening?
There are no other questions, Your Worship.
Pardon?
There are no other questions.
As there are no other questions this evening, I'll call for adjournment. Moved by Councillor Piper, seconded by Councillor Palmer. Call the question. All in favour? Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for coming this evening. Nice to see your faces. Thanks for your input.